Shalom, this is Rob with Heart of Messiah and Torah Resource. And today, for our ancient manuscripts, we are looking at another fragment from the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's not from Qumran. I'll show you where it's from. It's from Nahal Hever, it's called. So we're using the Google world here. And if I zoom in, it's called the Cave of Letters is where this was found. So here's a picture of the Dead Sea, of course, you can see that. And Qumran is up here north, if you can see my cursor, on the northwest corner here of the Dead Sea. But way down here in the Judean desert, between En-Gedi and Masada, so En-Gedi's here and Masada's way, way down here, you'll see, you can find this even on your own Google, you see this. This is called a Nahal, so this is a stream that dries up, but it runs like a river when there's rain. And all the rain runs down through here in a river that dries up. But it's called Nahal Hever, and there's a cave found here that had a stash of manuscripts from the early 2nd century AD. So this is after the stash here. It was after the destruction of the temple, after Masada had been destroyed. They call it the Cave of Letters, and you can learn all about it. So the manuscript, though, looks like this here. It's not very much, is it? It's pretty small. And this is from Numbers, which is this week's Torah portion. It's Parashat Huqqat, which begins with the red heifer instructions. But here, this is from Numbers chapter 20, and this is the end of verses 7 into the beginning of verse 8. And what we see here is just this tiny sliver. We don't have any other major fragments of this passage. It's just this. And so what happened to the rest of it? Dissolved? Did it get burned up? We don't know. But here we have Numbers 27 through 8, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit on it. And I think I'm going to change to a white ink. Let's see if that will maybe look and get some contrast here. And in Numbers 20, it's right after Miriam dies. She dies in the wilderness, and the people of Israel they're just stretched thin. And it says the people contended with Moses. They said, if we had only perished when our brothers perished before the Lord, why have you brought the Lord's assembly into the wilderness for us and our beasts to die here? Why have you made us come up from Egypt to bring us into this wretched place? And they're complaining. He said there's not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates. There's no water to drink. Well, it says Moses and Aaron came in from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting, and they fell on their faces. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod, and you and your brother Aaron assemble the congregation and speak to the rock before their eyes, that it may yield its water. You shall thus bring forth water for them out of the rock, and let the congregation and their beasts drink. Well, that takes us up through the end of verse 8. Well, it's a famous passage. Of course, we remember that Moses disobeys the Lord and actually strikes the rock twice. And we all know what happens there. Well, what our fragment here shows us is the end of verse 7 and the beginning of verse 8. And I know that the Facebook still has not fixed their video, so it doesn't always update like it should. But so remember, Hebrew, we start on this side and we read from right to left like that. And the first thing we see is this tall bit here, which is a lamed, like that. And that's from verse 7, where it says, the Lord spoke to Moses. And now there's a bunch of text here that we lost. That is, maybe it got wet and the ink came off. We don't know, or got rubbed off. But there would have been an aleph here, 2, and then we have the top of a mem. You can kind of see that. And you can see part of a shin, like that, and then a hey. And then we see the lamed that I already wrote, an aleph, another mem, which top of it's broken, a resh. And so this is the Lord spoke. It might have been up here on the previous line of this manuscript. But here we have El, which is the word to, Moshe, mem, shin, hey. Lemor is lamed, aleph, mem, resh. El Moshe lemor, to Moses saying, and then we see this nice kuf here, kuf chet, which is kach, take. So this is the imperative from lakach, which just means take. And what is he to take? Take, it says et, to take et hamate. The mate is the rod, the staff. So we see our aleph here, our tav, and then we have another hey that we can't see very well, a mem, bottom of a mem, bottom of a tet, and then another hey. So if we added some space, it would be kach et ha mate. So in the full Hebrew would be would begin with the word vaidaber Adonai, and like I said, it probably would have been up here on the previous line, and it would be probably the tetragrammaton as we have in the Masoretic text, vaidaber Adonai, and then we finish that line, and then we come here, El Moshe lemor, to Moses saying, and then here, kach et hamate, take the staff, take the rod. So if I go and I'll erase what I wrote above the actual manuscript here, and you can see it. Now this dates to 2nd century CE, like I said before. So this is post destruction. Most likely. That's where a lot of the material we find there was dated to post-destruction. Now, the text itself could have been written sooner and brought there. Well, most certainly it was brought to the cave and stashed there. But the styles of the letters are very interesting. The aleph is very intricate. If we zoom in and just see this aleph, notice it has, oops, I'm going to go back to a better contrast. Notice the tav goes like this. Notice the difference between a hey here and a chet here. They're very, very close. The hey is got kind of like this going on, where the chet seems to have a different approach to this upper left corner, but they're highly non-discernible, I should say. They look very, very much alike, the hays and the chets. Here's another aleph here. You can see, pretty fancy. So this doesn't look like a lot of the manuscripts that we've looked at in the past from Qumran. But there you have it. So this is from Nahal Hever, which is in the Judean desert, as we pointed out here, Cave of Letters. And I think this cave was discovered in the 50s. So the Qumran manuscripts had already been discovered, and they were being translated. And I think by the 1960s, these fragments here from Nahal Hever had been discovered and were being classified and translated, etc. So there you have it. Numbers 20, the end of verse 7, the beginning of verse 8. Some questions that we don't have the answers to. Was this part of an entire Torah scroll? It seems when you see all that's over here, we don't know if it looks like some letters had faded, but this looks like a giant margin here also in the leather. Was this a whole Torah scroll? Was it just the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers? Was it just a collection of Bible verses? We don't know. But there's enough here to know that at least these few letters that are preserved here in this string fit precisely with the Masoretic text of Numbers, the end of Numbers 20 and the beginning of Numbers 20 verse 7 and the beginning of Numbers 20 verse 8. Well, I hope this was another fun and entertaining and also educational look at the Torah portion from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Shabbat Shalom.